Welcome to the Daily Plunge. We are in the book of Proverbs, chapter 8, verses 22 through 36. Now, it starts off by talking about how the Lord brought me forth as his first work, which means that we are to understand that wisdom is not Jesus Christ, and wisdom is not the Holy Spirit, because the Son and the Spirit are with the Lord, God the Father, eternally. They are not a work of God. They are God. They are one God, right? And so wisdom is the first work of God. And what is that? Wisdom is grounded in God's character, God's majesty, God's holiness, but it's also God's intelligence, God's intellect, God's creation. And as he says, before I brought forth, wisdom was there before there was a beginning, before anything came into being. When there were no watery depths, there was no springs overflowing with water, mountains weren't settled in place, the hills hadn't been set up yet, and before there were any fields or even dust on the earth, even just dust, there was God's wisdom, because it is God's wisdom. It is God's understanding, God's intellect. That is the foundation of all that is. It is God's creative design and God's character that is embodied in the design. And so he says how I was given birth before that, and that God establishes the boundaries and the foundations of all that is, right, through his wisdom. And then verse 30, this is huge. He says, I was constantly in his presence, at his side, and I was filled with delight day after day. And if we have God's wisdom, we will be filled with delight by knowing God day after day. It's not an occasional thing, right? That we will, as he says, rejoice in his presence. And to be foolish, we're fools if we're not rejoicing in God's presence. He goes on to say, rejoicing in his creation. That if we have the wisdom of God, that like wisdom, we would rejoice over the birds of the air, the creatures of the field, the trees and the mountains, and even the blades of grass. And to delight in mankind. And this is a great line to remind us, yes, even though we frustrate God by our arrogance, our narcissism, our sin, that God delights in us. And as his creatures, we are to delight in one another. Look past the sin of others and to see them as the cosmic creation they are. So then he goes on, verse 34, heed my ways. Listen and be wise. Hold on to the words I'm giving to you, because these words are necessary for a true and fulfilling life. This wisdom that God has, because to go against the very wisdom that created everything is to go against the operating manual of creation. So blessed are those who listen, right? Who are watching and waiting daily for God's wisdom. And that's, again, are we doing that? Are we looking each and every day for God's wisdom? Are we at God's door, with our prayers, banging on the door saying, God, give me a nugget for today? For those who find me find life. They find full life. They find abundant life. They find favor, blessing from and with God. But those who fail to find the Lord, those who turn away from God, they harm themselves, they hate God, and they love death. They are death eaters. Well, thanks, friends. Have a blessed day.